Are you coming to the tree where they strung up a man? They say murder three. Strange things that happen here. How stranger would it be if we met at midnight in the hanging tree?
And welcome to the show. I'm your host, Chris James. Tonight's show was suggested by David Subith, who said he really liked last week's show. He asked me to look into weird things found in caves and mines. He did mention some guy trying to find a cave near Area 51, but I got too many stories already for the show, so I might have to hold that one until the next time. I've worked a lot of jobs over the years. I laid railroad tracks for a summer, rebuilt an aluminum smelter, dug fence posts. I was a firefighter for a long time. I loved it. That was the best job I ever had. There are some jobs I would never consider, like being a miner. Not even gold. Working underground is a nope in my book. Siberian miners dug up an ancient unidentified mammal from the diamond mine in Murninsky, which is a district of Sakha Republic in northeastern Russia. At first glance, the thing looked like a demon. Maybe a very small demon, but still a dynamite and all. According to the Siberian Times, once the miners looked the thing over, they decided it wasn't a demon, but maybe some new unknown species of dinosaur. Some theorized this thing was a chupacabra. Researchers have suggested it could be a young wolverine, a small bear-like creature with very strong jaws and large canine teeth. Other researchers said the creature is either a sable or a pine marten, which are small ferret-like species, all in the weasel family. Judging by its very slender body and large bone-crushing skull, it's likely the animal belongs to the Mustelidae family of carnivore mammals, which includes otters, badgers, weasels, minks, things like that. Though they won't know until the specimen, gets a proper analysis. The Siberian Times reported it expected that the creature will be taken from Uzbekistan to the regional capital of Yakutsk for testing. Whatever the thing turns out to be, it's very odd that the creature was found so far underground. It would have had to have spent days traveling total darkness to get to where it was found. Not the kind of behavior normally found in any kind of an animal. October 4th, 1903. Something was coming from a mine and preying on the inhabitants of a town of Van Meter, Iowa. It became known as the Van Meter Monster. Late at night, people began hearing weird sounds of something sneaking about the town. No one saw the thing, but in the morning they did find its three-toed tracks, which were huge. After a few nights of this creature roaming about, somebody got a glimpse of it. The creature was described as looking like a cross between a man and some kind of an animal. It had horns, bat-like wings, and glowing red eyes. Some folks linked the Van Meter monster to the Point Pleasant Mothman. Others said the thing was a pterodactyl, like what had been seen in Tombstone, Arizona, back in 1864. Several men in the town shot at the beast with seemingly no effect. It is possible that they all missed, being shook up by what they were seeing. Some of the men said they saw the bullets hit the beast, and it simply shook off the rounds and kept flying. Now, you can't watch a bullet go down range. They travel too fast. But you can see the round's effects on what it hit. Skin might fly from the wound, or you might see dirt being flung about from where the rounds hit. Dr. Otka was awakened by a bright light shining in his face. He looked out the window and saw the source of the light was a huge tusk in the middle of the creature's head. Running outside, the doctor fired his shotgun at the weird beast. He said he saw the rounds hit, but with no effect. Peter Dunn, a cashier at the bank, was sleeping inside the bank, thinking that all this monster talk was a ruse being made by bank robbers. He thought the idea was they were trying to get everybody to hide inside so they could sneak into the bank late at night and steal everything. At 2 o'clock in the morning, he was blinded by a light shining in through the front window of the bank. Dunn fired his shotgun right at the window. The glass and the curtains were destroyed as the buckshot blasted everything in their path. As the smoke cleared, he saw the monster standing by the now destroyed opening. It leapt into the air and flew away. On the ground by the window were huge three-toed prints. Dr. White saw the monster climbing down a telephone pole. He said it had a beak kind of like a parrot. As it got to the ground, the creature began to travel in leaps like a kangaroo, flapping its huge wings to maintain its balance. Dr. White said he did not see any light coming from the beast. He also fired at it, and he believed he wounded the thing. The shot was followed by an overpowering odor. Sidney Gregg was attracted by the sound of gunfire. He ran to the scene, and he saw the monster as it flew away. The following Monday night, Mr. Griffith, an implement dealer, drove into town at 1 in the morning. He saw what he thought was an electric searchlight on the roof of one of the downtown stores. As he was looking up at the light, it looked as if it jumped across to another building and then disappeared. By the end of the week, the whole town was on high alert. Shortly after midnight, J.L. Platt, the foreman of the brick plant, heard weird sounds coming from an abandoned coal mine. Thinking that he had discovered the monster's hideout, he notified the town's volunteer militia. The townspeople arrived at the opening to the mine and waited. After a few minutes, the monster came walking from the opening. It was accompanied by a second, shorter version of itself. The men all began to fire at these two bizarre creatures. The creatures acted as if the bullets were nothing more than a minor annoyance. They both leapt into the air and flew away into the night sky. Figuring this was the creature's home, the men waited until morning. Just before sunup, both beasts came flapping through the sky. They landed by the mine opening and walked into the shaft. The shaft was immediately sealed using explosives, and the two monsters were never seen again. They're both still down there in the mine, or they found another exit and flew to a new town to look for dinner, perhaps Point Pleasant. The Salt Men are a bunch of mummies that were discovered in the Cheharabad salt mine of Iran. This mine is in the Zanjan province, and it's located about 200 miles northwest of Tehran. The men were believed to have died in the salt mine, and they were preserved by the salt. A total of 6 salt men have been discovered over the years, and they belong to different eras. They come from the Archimedean era and the Sasanian periods. 1994, a commercial salt mining operation were being carried out in the Cherabad salt mine when the first salt man was discovered. He had with him several artifacts: an iron knife, a gold earring. Also, some clothing was found near the body. This salt man is easily recognized due to his long white hair and beard. His head, and just his head, is currently on display in a glass case in the National Museum of Iran. It's been estimated that the man was living sometime around 1700 years ago, during the time of the Sasanian Empire, and he died sometime around the age of 35 to 40 years. In the following year, more salt men were uncovered by men working in the salt mine. In 2004, a salt man was found by miners, and an emergency evacuation campaign was undertaken. Salt men were also discovered in 2005, and the most recent mummy was in 2007. It is believed that the men lost their lives in the mine as a result of some kind of a mining accident. The first salt man is being kept in the National Museum of Iran, and the subsequent 4 were brought to Zanjan Archaeology Museum. The 6th salt man was left in situ. That means where they found him. The discovery of the salt men has allowed archaeologists to get a glimpse into the lives of these ancient salt miners, and much scientific research has been conducted on the mummies. Areas in which such research is being performed include archaeobotany, archaeozoology, isotope analysis, mining archaeology, and physical anthropology. These studies have helped archaeologists to gain a better understanding of ancient mining practices. For example, by examining the various artifacts and ecofacts in their stratigraphic areas, 3 different mining phases were found. Further research has shown that mining practices were organized differently during these time periods. During the Sasanian period, mining was established in the surrounding area. That based on isotope data, the supply was organized in a regional basis. By comparison, during the Archimedean period, it seems there were foreign miners working in the salt mine, and the mine was accessed from areas farther away. Such studies have helped revise certain accepted factors about the saltmen. For instance, it is generally reported that 6 saltmen have been discovered so far. However, anatomical analysis of the mummies has revealed that some body parts, which were initially thought to have belonged to a single individual, were in fact from different bodies. Thus, it has been suggested that the number of saltmen should actually be 8 or more. A scientific study on the saltmen and the salt mine has been carried out. There's a lack of conservation and preservation of the mummified remains. In a report from 2009, it was mentioned that the mummies were being displayed in plexiglass that were not hermetically sealed. As a result of changes in air temperature and pressure, cracks have appeared in the cases. This in turn allows bacteria and insects to get inside the cases, causing all kinds of damage to the mummies. Measures are reported to have been taken to ensure that the saltmen do not undergo further deterioration. In some reports, it was said that plans for making permanent cases for the saltmen have been completed, and the necessary funds for construction of the encasings should be found soon. Unfortunately, a lot of the so-called experts who are taking care of a lot of these ancient artifacts aren't all that good at what they do. Just look at what happened to King Tut's death mask. One of the experts dropped it, broke off the beard that was attached to the head's chin. Well, then he glued it back on crooked. Well, these are the experts. The Klerksdorp spheres are what some are calling definitive proof of the advanced technology abilities of ancient cultures. The spheres are small, smooth metal spheres, usually about an inch in diameter, many with concentric grooves running around their circumference. They are perfect spheres, which would have been nearly impossible for ancient men to have made by hand. The spheres vary in color between dark blue to various hues of red. Their most impressive feature is that according to some, they could not be manufactured on Earth, but must have come from another planet. There are those who say that this has been confirmed by NASA. Well, NASA, of course, says they never said the spheres were from outer space, but NASA does stand for never a straight answer. They're said to be perfectly balanced and to be the hardest objects known to man. The spheres have been found by miners and rockhounds in and around a mining operation near a small town called Oostedal, South Africa, which is owned by a local mining company, Wonderstone Limited. Wonderstone's primary product is a mineral called pyrophyllite, which is composed of aluminum silicate hydrate. Pyrophyllite is a relatively soft mineral used in manufacturing train brakes to aerospace technology, and sometimes it's used in sculpting. The Wonderstone Deposit is billions of years old, and it is inside the pyrophyllite deposit that all of the Klerksdorp spheres have been found. The spheres have been studied by a number of people since their first discovery. Paul Heinrich, geologist and archaeologist at Louisiana State University, and Bruce Carncross at the University of Johannesburg. The naysayers say these are natural occurring round objects, but they never get around to saying how or why they were made. Hard round things are not normally found inside soft rock, especially way down in the bottom of a mine. The Paiute Indians have a legend about their ancestors in a major run-in with red-haired giants. These giants, known as Sitika, used to kill and eat the Paiute Indians. Not wanting to be the main course, or even dessert, the Indians managed to convince all the tribes in the area to bond together in order to wipe out these giant cannibals. The men drove the Sitika into the cave, where they then began piling up wood and brush at the entrance, which was set on fire. Any giants that tried to escape were met by a hail of arrows. As settlers began to move into the area that would become Nevada, they heard stories about giant cannibals with red hair that lived in the area. These stories were scoffed at and considered to be just crazy Indian tales. A man looking for fertilizer found Lovelock Cave was filled with bat guano, bat poo. This is the final product from eating bugs, and it makes good fertilizer. He hired some men to dig out all that bat poo so he could sell it to the local farmers. As the men were digging down through the 7 feet of bat poo, they discovered a partially mummified body. The skull still had some long red hair stuck to it in places. Once they pulled the remains from the cave, they discovered it was over 9 feet tall, and the mouth had 2 rows of teeth. Thinking this find might be worth a lot more money than selling bat poo, the owner contacted the University of California in 1924 and told them about what was in the cave. The professionals moved in and began excavating the cave. Among the artifacts found were woven cloth, tools, duck decoys, inscribed stones, and a lot more bodies. Some of these bodies were nothing but bones, while others had survived mostly intact. Some of the bodies were up to 12 feet tall, and they all had red hair. The teeth were in double rows in all of their mouths. Thousands of artifacts were found, discarded outside the cave after being separated from the guano by the original workers. Most of the non-human artifacts were shipped to local museums or to the University of California at Berkeley. They're still on display today. As for the bodies, they all vanished, probably shipped off to the Smithsonian to be secreted away in some back room or more than likely destroyed. Why would a museum destroy ancient remains? The Smithsonian has a long and ugly history of trying to wipe out Indian heritage. If you're going to waltz in and steal somebody's land, it's a lot easier to say these folks are nothing but mere savages. The Smithsonian was trying to make it look as if Indians had no real claim to the land they owned. Just a bunch of wild savages who hunt animals, and they don't have any real use for the land itself. I'm not too sure why the Smithsonian rounded up all the giants. Maybe they're conducting experiments on how to create a race of giants to perform menial tasks. More than likely, it's some top-secret military contract. We visited a cave a while ago that had an 8-foot-tall skeleton with red hair on display. The Smithsonian confiscated the body, saying it belonged to one of the Indian tribes. There are lots of red-headed Indians out there, aren't there? Then they said any tribe wishing to get a hold of the body had to prove the body was one of their ancestors. In the dark back rooms of the museum are hundreds of bodies that all at one time were living, breathing Indians and now are property of the museum. There are also hundreds of giants hidden away from sight. If you ask to see the bodies from Lovelock Cave, one museum will tell you the others have it, and vice versa. This is if they even acknowledge your inquiry. The original miners and excavators claim to have several mummies unearthed, measuring in height from 8 to 12 feet tall. All that remains are one jawbone and one misshaped skull. An ooport is an out-of-place artifact. It is a term applied to dozens of prehistoric objects found in various places around the world that, given their level of technology, are completely at odds with their determined age based on physical, chemical, or geological evidence. Ooparts often are frustrating to conventional scientists. They shake up the world, and therefore mainstream science will do their best to make these items disappear instead of trying to study them. Science is supposed to examine things without preconceived ideas. Most scientists begin looking at new discoveries thinking they already know how things should turn out. 1998, electrical engineer John Williams discovered what looked like an electrical connector sticking up out of the ground. Curiosity got to him and he began digging. He found that the three-pronged plug was embedded in a small rock. This plug was 3 round prong connectors set in a round face. It is sticking out from the side of a stone. According to Williams, the curious stone was unearthed during an excursion in a rural location of North America, which is far from human settlements, industrial complexes, airports, factories, and electronic or nuclear plants. Williams refuses to give the exact location of his find for fear that the site might be plundered of other mysterious relics. If you make a discovery and think there might be more under the ground, you have to keep the location secret. That's just how it is. The plug became known as the Enigma Lift, or Petrodox. The weird-looking device has the undeniable appearance of an electrical component embedded in a naturally formed solid granite stone composed of quartz, feldspar, and very small percentages of mica. You can have a look at this thing for yourself if you want to just search for Enigma Lift or Petrodox. Petrodox. Due to the secrecy surrounding the find, an extraterrestrial theory surrounding the object, many from the scientific community have categorized the Enigma Lift as a hoax manufactured solely for the fame and fortune by its owner. Williams has said that his unusual stone is available to any researcher for analysis. Scientists have so far shied away from testing the rock despite the open invitation. They already know it's a fake, so why bother examining it? According to Williams, who has consulted an engineer and a geologist to examine the specimen, the electronic component embedded in the granite reveals no trace of having been glued or welded in any form known. It is clear that the object already existed at the time of the formation of the rock. Geological analysis has shown the rock to be about 100,000 years old. The instrument caught in the Petrodox has been compared by some investigators to an electronic XLR connector or a similar component. It gives off a weak magnetic attraction, and ohm meter readings reveal it has the strength approaching that of an open circuit. The 3-pronged plug is held by a matrix of thus far undetermined origin. The 0.3-inch diameter piece does not appear to be manufactured out of wood, plastic, rubber, metal, or any other recognizable material. While Williams forbid the specimen from being broken open, he has employed a powerful X-ray that revealed that the matrix component extends into an opaque internal structure within the stone. While skeptics believe that it's a sham, Williams is convinced that he has unearthed a genuine relic of either ancient man-made or alien technology, and he's eager to have scientists authenticate it. However, Williams insists that he be present during analysis. The rock remains unharmed, and that he doesn't have to pay for the research involved. Some believe that scientists distance themselves from the specimen because they're afraid of what they might discover. While scientific analysis could confirm it's an elaborate hoax, it might also radically change our understanding of human history. If the specimen is determined to be genuine, researchers would also have to consider its design. Why would such an component be embedded in a rock? What purpose would such an object serve? Is there a need for electronic rocks? Williams believes that the location of his stone offers further evidence of a bygone civilization or extraterrestrial evidence. He is currently seeking a team of open-minded investigators to thoroughly examine the area where the rock was found. And with that, it's time for a few shout-outs for my favorite companies. Let a few relatives and friends, maybe hopefully get a few bucks. The Organic Man Coffee Trike at 4501 McPherson has the best coffee on the planet. If you'd like to try some, but you do not live in the Laredo area, you can go to organicmancoffeetrike.shop and order a couple of bags. Optica del Norte is the place you want to go if you're having a hard time seeing. Why hold things out at arm's length when you can just get your eyes checked and maybe wear glasses like half the people in the United States do? 107 Calle del Norte here in Laredo. The 1755 barbecue is at the Frontera Beer Garden on San Bernardo. Some of the best food you'll find. Just look for the bright red food trailer parked at the Pan American Quartz. If your skin needs fixing because you've been abusing it over the years by getting too much sunshine, contact Lourdes James for a free skincare makeover. You can contact her at 956-723-3019. If you hear a bump in the night and you think you might have a ghost or something else hanging out in your home, contact the Laredo Paranormal Research Society and have them come by and give your house a once-over or a twice-over. You can contact them at laredoparanormal@hotmail.com. One of these days, I'm going to have to get a new soundboard and record all of my commercials again. That way I can take a break and give my voice a little rest in between the show. It's also a bit hard to drink coffee while doing the show since I have to stop and don't like those long, pregnant pauses. Makes people think you fell out of your chair or something. Another opart was found in Buchanan, West Virginia in 1944 by a 10-year-old boy named Anderson. The boy was keeping the heater going by putting coal in any time the fire would die down. Using a shovel, the boy had scooped up some coal and was moving it towards the stove when one piece fell to the floor, breaking in half. He picked up the hunk of coal and noticed something shiny sticking out from the rock. Wondering what this might be, the boy picked away at the remainder of the coal, exposing a small bell. His parents were surprised to see this bell being pulled from a hunk of solid coal. The war was on, and there was no one to contact in order to ask how a metal bell could wind up inside a piece of coal dug from the earth. The bell wound up sitting on a desk in the living room for the next several years. When people found out about the bell, they would sometimes come to the house and have a look. Word got around town. An evangelical tract was made that presented the bell as indisputable proof of the worldwide deluge, Noah's flood. Ripley's, believe it or not, found out about the bell, and they sent a representative to investigate. In 1964, a man named Boris Bilas took the bell to a geology department at the University of Delaware at Wilmington, where it was studied and then returned. They confirmed the bell was handmade. It had images carved into the surface, and the handle was shaped like two figures. Anderson was interviewed, and the bell was prominently featured in a 1992 CBS docudrama production called Ancient Secrets of the Bible. Creationist books and articles continue to describe this mystery bell, touting it as a genuine antediluvian artifact. Antediluvian means before the flood. Antebellum means before the Civil War. Things like that. ante as in antechamber. The bell was even displayed at the San Diego Museum of Natural History for a couple of years. And they made an offer to purchase it, but Anderson thought he'd better hang on to it. Anderson spent a great deal of time researching the demon-like figures positioned atop the bell, sending inquiries to multiple universities. He discovered the shape of one figure was similar to Pazuzu, the Babylonian demon of the southwest wind. It also kind of looked like the Hindu deity Garuda. Both the Babylonian demon and the bell figurine have horns on their heads. One is partially broken off of the bell. Their narrow faces are eerily alike. Garuda, the Hindu beaked flying god, is sometimes depicted on tops of bells. The wings and the kneeling posture of the bell figurine are typical of Garuda. Many religions use similar rituals. The use of bells during services is found all over the world. The depiction of gods sometimes look alike. A winged being carved into a metal can be just about any god depending on where it is found. The big question I have is, how did a bell depicting either Garuda or Pazuzu wind up in a coal mine in West Virginia? The images carved into the handle of the bell just might depict some other god from thousands of years ago, someone no one remembers today. How could it have been underground for long enough to become encased in coal? The only answer I can come up with is there must have been a civilization in the Americas long before modern science says there were people in the area. If you want to travel the world on a very tight budget, you can just drive around Texas. We have a Paris, Moscow, Carthage, Athens, Buda, Dublin, Edinburgh, Liverpool. We have cities and towns named for cities found all over the planet. There's even a London, Texas. In June 1936, Max Hahn and his wife Emma were hiking along the Red Creek near London, Texas. On the side of the trail, they found a rock with what looked like a stick shoved through it. Taking a closer look, they found it was a wooden handle that was protruding from the stone. They took this weird discovery home and they showed it to their son. Their son got curious about how the wooden handle could be stuck inside the rock. If it was just shoved into a hole in the rock, it should pull back out. When the handle refused to come out, he tried hitting the rock with a hammer. The rock split open. Inside was an iron hammer. The hammer handle was what had been sticking out of the rock. The London hammer, or London artifact as some call it, was bought in 1983 and promoted by Bro as a monumental pre-flood discovery. Additional curiosity was generated when a 1985 report dated the rock formation encompassing the hammer as 400 or 500 million years old. The hammer is 6 inches long and about 1 inch across. The metal has been identified as consisting of 96% iron, 2% chlorine, and 1% sulfur. Believers point out that this hammer has not rusted since its discovery over 60 years ago. This is certainly a unique blend of metallurgy, which some claim to be a lost technology of ancient man. So the mystery begins. What is a hammer doing embedded in such ancient rock, and what does this mean about the age of mankind, since man was not supposed to exist for a few 100 million years? The only true method of determining the age of the hammer is through carbon-14 dating of the wooden handle. However, Bao has yet to authorize this procedure. The handle appears to be partially fossilized, so this certainly adds to the argument that this is a very ancient tool. If I know this hammer wasn't found in a mine or a cave, but it's still found in a rock, maybe it does fit into today's show, but it's weird, so I included it. I found this next story while looking for cave or mine finds. I thought it was just a creepy pasta kind of thing. I wasn't going to include it, but after reading a lot of websites and watching quite a few videos, I got to believing that this story is true. I have received a few emails from people asking if the stories I tell are true or if I have any association with creepypasta, and everything that I tell on Strange Things, as far as I know, is true. Now, I can't prove all of these stories are true, but I haven't found enough evidence saying that they're not true. So, here it is. You can make up your own mind as to the veracity of the events. In January 2016, Danny posted a story in Reddit telling about a weird item he found in a cave. He and his friend were hiking in the Catskills. On the side of the trail was a small cave. The pair looked in the cave and they found a small statuette that looked very odd. The statuette, now known as the crone, is about 12 inches high. It is hand-carved, single piece of wood. There's a noose hung from the neck of the crone, and the eyes have nails driven into them. Danny said he wanted nothing to do with the crone, saying, "Everyone says there are devil worshippers that come out here to sacrifice animals and do their spells and things, so I didn't want anything to do with this thing." His friend decided it'd be a good thing to take it home. Anytime we do a ghost investigation, no matter where it is, we have a policy of never taking anything found at the site home. We take photos and videos. We do recordings, but no physical items are ever removed. You never know what might be attached to an item and wind up coming home with you. A couple of days later, Danny's friend called saying he couldn't sleep at night because of all the noise in his place. He said he smelled weird aromas as well. Something or someone would knock at the front door, but there was never anyone there. His friend said he began smelling something wet in his place. He then began finding wet footprints going back and forth through the rooms. He said it looked like somebody was walking around the place barefoot, leaving water everywhere. The worst part was when the statuette was moved around the room. There was nobody around to move it, so it must have been doing it on its own. Danny allowed his friend to come stay at his place until they could find an answer to the possessed statuette. Danny began posting on the internet looking for advice. This is not the way to do it. There are too many experts out there who don't know what they're talking about. If you have to search the net, try looking for paranormal groups who have a legitimate history. You'll have to do some research. You don't want to take advice from somebody who watched too many movies and think that they're now demonologists. I saw The Exorcist. I don't know a thing about performing an exorcism. Over the next few hours, Danny received a lot of answers. Some believed that the carving had roots in voodoo. Others thought it was the work of a satanic cult. And a few even believed that the creepy statue was placed in the woods specifically to scare hikers. And apparently it was doing its job. Some posters even offered to purchase the idol, while others offered insults. Chris Carter, the assistant producer of Finding Bigfoot, stumbled upon the posts while taking a break from filming. He had just finished a show about paranormal activity surrounding Bigfoot. Season 10, Episode 1 was called Supernatural Bigfoot. Reading the post, Carter thought this might just be something for Reggie Byard, RPG, Greg Newkirk, and Dana Newkirk to look into, so he sent their contact information to Danny. Danny wrote to him and his friend, went back to try getting the statuette and maybe return it to the cave. When they went to his friend's apartment, the place reeked of wet animal. The crone was nowhere to be found. They finally tracked it down in the hallway. As they were returning to the living room, the pair were confronted by a naked woman crouching in the corner. She was dripping wet, looked to be very old, and her eyes glowed. Well, the pair left in a huge hurry. Danny got a hold of Greg and arranged to mail the statuette to him and his wife so they could put it in their haunted museum. When the package arrived, Greg and Dana took the number of photos to begin their investigation. They figured this might turn out to be just another weird item with little or no actual activity connected to it, so they just left the crone on the desk. Later that evening, as they were sitting in the living room watching a movie, the two investigators heard a loud commotion coming from the office. Greg thought it was his cats in a disagreement, so he went to sort things out. The office door was closed and there were no cats in the room. Greg was looking around the office when he noticed a piece of a crucifix laying on the floor. The Jesus figure was on the floor, having been broken off of the cross. The cross was still hanging from the wall, along with one arm from the Jesus figure. Right below where the cross was hanging stood the statuette known as the crone. Both cats were later found hiding under the bed. This inexplicable occurrence needed looking into, so Greg got their motion-activated camera and he set it up in front of the crone. The statuette was to be recorded if there was any activity around it. For the next 2 months, the crone was under surveillance. The camera memory card was checked every day, but nothing was recorded. On a few nights, Greg or Donna heard odd sounds, but they wrote these off as just normal sounds from the house. Maybe the cat's running about at night or something. After months of nothing on the camera, the motion device was triggered 3 times. Checking the memory card, neither Donna or Greg could find anything out of place. They put the photos together and they tried running them in sequence. That's when they noticed something really odd. Between 3 and 4 o'clock in the morning, the crone moved. Things only got stranger from there. Several weeks later, with no further anomalous activity captured, Donna called Greg into the living room to ask him why he had decided to walk on the furniture after taking a shower. She pointed to wet footprints that could be seen along the back of the couch. Greg was confused. He hadn't taken a shower yet, and he sure didn't get up and stand on the couch. They began to detect the smell of stagnant water in their home. Both reported feelings of dread lingering around them. For days, the earthy scent of pond water lingered in the house. with an intense feeling of dread and paranoia following it. There was an undeniable sense that something was there with them, just waiting for the right moment to reveal itself. One evening while watching Paranormal Lockdown, the smell of stagnant water was just too much to endure. Greg went to the office, grabbed the crone, and took her to the living room. They needed to talk. Greg said, haunted objects, like misbehaving children, tend to respond and retaliate to the attention given to them during tantrums. But our usual routine of ignoring bad behavior wasn't working. We were past due for a sit-down discussion with the crone. No one interrupts our favorite paranormal television, not even terrifying entities. This is not the first time he had a discussion with a haunted object. He told the crone, "If we left you with the hikers, you would have found your way into a fire pit or a garbage can. If you found your way to a priest, you'd be bound and buried, or worse, locked on a dusty shelf somewhere. We're happy for you to live here, but only if you respect the situation. If you've got unfinished business, we'll help you put it to bed. But if you don't treat us respectfully, you're going in the box." The box is a place reserved for things that don't follow the rules. This reminds me of Ishmael and that doll. He borrowed a haunted doll from its owner. The doll wound up in places it shouldn't be, so Ishmael keeps it locked in a plexiglass box now. As Greg was laying down the law to the crone, Donna heard the sound of water splashing in the back of the house. Thinking there might have been a busted pipe or something, they went to investigate to see what needed fixing. The sound of running water stopped. Then they heard a thump come from the living room. Back by the couch, they looked for the crone. They looked all over the room, and they finally found it underneath the TV. Greg got down on the floor to recover the statuette. As he was down on his hands and knees looking under the TV, Donna yelled for him to look out and ran to his side. She caught the TV as it was tipping over on top of him. As they sat there looking at each other, they both heard 3 knocks come from the wall. Greg decided the crone needed to be locked up, so into the box she went. Greg and Donna own a traveling paranormal museum. The purpose of the Traveling Museum of the Paranormal and Occult has been to provide the public with a rare, hands-on experience with haunted items that they can't get anywhere else in the world. It was clear that the crone was different. The museum wishes to share the experience of handling things that are possibly dangerous. Cursed items that in a normal setting would be off limits to the public. Most museums have a policy: you can look but don't touch. The Traveling Paranormal Museum has a policy that you can touch the items, except for certain things like the crone. She's on the do not handle list. Featuring hundreds of haunted, historical, and supernaturally significant artifacts, the Traveling Museum of the Paranormal and Occult is the world's only mobile museum of the unexplained. It is expertly curated by Donna and Greg Newkirk, preeminent researchers of the supernatural. The roving exhibit invites curious visitors to inspect, investigate, and even handle rare artifacts collected from infamous hauntings, parapsychology breakthroughs, mysterious cryptozoological discoveries, and more. You can check out their website at weekinweird.com. WEEKINWEIRD.com. W-E-I-R-D. People began to experience strange symptoms around the object, the most common of which were burning sensation in the eyes, as if the statue was trying to get the person to not look at it. There was overwhelming fear and anxiety accompanied the opening of the crone's padlocked home, and the hands-off policy barely mattered as visitors seemed to instinctively recoil from the artifact. Psychics and sensitives in particular had the most visceral reactions to the crone. Some believe it was created as a vessel for an inhuman spirit. Some believe it was cursed intended to bind and kill an unlucky victim. Acclaimed psychic Chip Coffey, like the drink only spelled different, acclaimed psychic Chip Coffey wanted to straight up exorcise the figure with holy water blessed by the Pope himself. April Slaughter, a gifted sensitive and medium, was kind enough to spend some time reading the crone for Greg and Donna at the 20th Annual Haunted America Conference in Elton, Illinois. She came to the conclusion that whatever is attached to the crone is an it and not a she. She also went on to say that this particular vessel and cave had been used several times over the course of many years. The purpose wasn't always the same, but the carving and the entity attached to it was. This would explain the mismatched age of the carving, the nails, and the rope. April also mentioned that whatever was contained within the crone knew that she could see it and explain its purpose, and the entity wasn't happy about that. As the museum traveled about the country, thousands of people weighed in on the crone. Many of them experienced this musty smell of stagnant water. They said they felt the creeping onset of the entity's presence, and a few even captured photographs of the artifact appearing to move on its own. If you ask a dozen people about an item, you'll get a dozen explanations. There were a lot of people who had a lot of ideas as to what and why the crone was made. Everybody agreed on one basic concept. The crone is not a nice entity. Nearly 6 months after the crone arrived at the Weird HQ, it remained on the very short Do Not Touch list, went on tour, and sealed in a padlocked case when not on display. If not just because of the apparently malevolent phenomena surrounding the object, but because Greg and Donna still can't figure out what the crone was designed for or who made it. With the creation of the paranormal object, intention is everything. If you go into a haunted location intending to have a scary, aggressive experience, you'll probably have one. If you intend to commune with a peaceful spirit residing in a location, you'll more than likely have a peaceful experience. The same goes for magic. With just a cursory glance, it's easy to see that somebody focused a lot of time, energy, and intent into the creation of the crone. It was carved by hand, probably with a very specific purpose in mind. Every rusty nail received a mental command as it was hammered into the figure's wooden eye sockets. The noose around the neck was tied with a hidden desire in mind. Greg believes the crone was created as an attempt to summon the spirit of a local witch for purposes unknown. The location of its discovery, coupled with the specifics of the carving's creation, led him to believe that somebody was aiming to commune with and contain a particular spirit. Donna, on the other hand, believes that the figure was created as a sort of protection object used to keep people away from a ritual area. A chipped coffee isn't sure why it was carved, only that the Babylonian spirit Marduk, a powerful entity with 50 names, is attached to it. Interesting to note is that Marduk is often associated with water. This might explain the wet smell of the locations where it has been placed, along with the wet footprints. Not to mention the woman seen in the corner who looked to be dripping wet as well. Greg tried to contact Danny on several occasions after the statuette had begun its weird manifestations. Danny seemed to have dropped off the edge of the planet. The social media profile he'd used was thrown away account. It was abandoned after the crone was in the mail. Oh, there's my timer. That is loud. At least in my headset, that is loud. This got me to wondering if the original story of the cave in the Catskills was just a way to get somebody to accept the statuette. I wonder if somebody might have made this nasty thing and then sent out the story to garner interest in the crone so somebody would offer to take it into their personal space. A random act of nastiness, like placing a bomb in a public place and then waiting to see what happened. I have sent a message to Greg and Donna just to see what they think of my bizarre thought process. They are still trying to locate the cave where the statuette was found. Now, I could be wrong. Maybe Danny really did find the crone and now he's just avoiding any attention. The person who made the thing might want to punish anyone who interfered in their nefarious activities. The statuette might have needed to stay in the cave in order to accomplish its mission. The area of interest to Greg and Donna has a history of witchcraft and paranormal activity. If you go to their website, weekinweird.com, you'll see videos of the statuette. People had been participating in a 24-hour-a-day observation of the crone. People reported seeing things going on in the video. Lights would flicker. The EMF meter would activate. The things kind of moved around on the videos. Those videos are still up on their site if you want to check them out. What is somewhat disturbing is people have had bad things going on in their homes as well. They would experience power outages, electronic equipment failure. Their eyes would feel like they were burning. They would get that weird smell of stagnant water in their homes. In one case, a person said they actually saw the crone herself in their home. In the final days of the carving's surveillance, Greg and Donna asked the viewers for experiment ideas. And somebody suggested a voodoo coffin nail, some holy water, and a crucifix as trigger objects. On her last night under 24/7 watch, the crone appeared to flick the nail away. Like I said, you can go to their website and you can watch the video. Figure it out for yourself. The crone is still a part of the Traveling Museum of the Paranormal and Occult's ongoing cross-country tour. It's still on the Do Not Touch list. On Halloween night, join the world's first live streamed 3D scan of the crone. During the scanning process, Donna Matthews will be performing the Estes method, a technique intended to send her into a trance state in an effort to open a direct line of communication with the entity attached to the artifact. She spent several weeks preparing for the experiment, and of all nights to perform it, they thought Halloween would be fitting. To join the live scanning experiment, make sure that you are a member of the Traveling Museum of the Paranormal and Occult and then request access to the secret members-only Facebook group. You'll be able to watch the scanning live, take part in the communication session, and share your thoughts with other museum members as well. I would join, but doing this show, I encounter so many interesting groups and organizations that I want to join, I would run out of money and time just trying to stay on top of everything. There are so many people out there with so many good ideas. Check it out if you'd like. I probably won't. Hope you enjoyed tonight's show. If you did, tell your friends what they're missing. Let them know that Strange Things with Chris James is out here. If you want to listen to the archives, you can check out strangethings.podomatic.com, where you'll find about 90 of the past shows. Due to the cost of storing all that media, you won't find all of the past shows. Those you'll find at YouTube. If you go to YouTube, you'll have to type in the whole name, Strange Things with Chris James, because there are 5 or 6 other podcasters going by the same name. I had it first, as far as I know. I had the name Strange Things 2 months before the TV show came out. Anyway, till next Saturday, this is Chris James for Strange Things.
Are you coming to the tree where they strung up a man, they say murder 3? Strange things that happen here, how stranger would it be if we met at midnight in the hanging tree?